taking a critical look at the gaming news of the week. This is Augmented Reality, presented by the Triple S League.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Augmented Reality podcast for April 25th, 2020. This is your source for news, leaks, and insights about games in the gaming industry. The Saturday edition of the show. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody is staying mentally and physically and emotionally healthy out there. It's a very difficult time for a lot of us. We're here in the midst of it with you. Definitely been a little harder than usual on my family this week, having to be cooped up, but we're pushing through. And we've got a great community on our Discord who's definitely helping with the situation. When I was a little down last night, was able to talk to a few people there, and it was good. Anyway, my name is Ash, and I'm here as always with Cyberpunk. Apologize for the late start, but we had to fix something, and I want to sincerely apologize for the misleading thumbnail and title that was up overnight. We made a mistake. So we're gonna be featuring some footage, and the nice thing about it not actually being a leak is that we can actually show you the footage without without the risk of damaging our relationship with CD Projekt Red. So that's actually a nice bonus.
Here's the problem. The problem really stemmed from me. Basically, I've seen so much that at this point I keep forgetting what is actually out and what's not actually out. And there was a big leak of stuff that was put out a while ago. It's circulated around within like people that are connected, but unfortunately, we can't show any of that. And when I saw this, I assumed that this was from the one thing that's been around, it's been making its rounds, which we can't show, which we can't talk about. We certainly can't show because it would be very much immediately taken down. And I thought that was this at first glance. And then later on I was like, oh wait, no, this is from the deep dive stuff. This has been out for ages. And thanks to Somulence and a couple others for pointing that out. Because I was running with the immediate recognition that because the same footage was part of the other thing, but it was all like put together, and then it was part of that stuff that was put out in the deep dive, but because it was all stringed together and it was grainy, it made me think of the other footage. So, not the other footage, other footage.
Yeah. There's more to it as well. Like there was apparently there was something leaked from an Italian event that cdpr did. I'm not sure if that's what same one you were talking about, but
is one of them.
Yeah, well, anyway, so
then that's the problem. Is like the game is so good that nobody's really willing to like take the hit by putting out something big, right? Because they know that A, it would get them in big trouble, and B, they would find out who did it. Eventually, they would find that out. Remember what I had mentioned a couple months ago back in, during the height of summer last year? It's like they have ways of like figuring out who was sitting where and which camera angle would have been in whose bag or hat or jacket lapel or spy glasses or any of the thousands of different ways that people have of recording this kind of footage, and they have abilities to kind of track that down. And everybody who got in had to sign a very big piece of paper, which would put them in violation of that paper, which would get them in big trouble. Now, that said, there were a few people who did record it and who had it and then who put it out. But yeah, so anyways, I was thinking this was it. This is not it. So my apologies. It's something about playing 22 hours of Trials of Mana yesterday had me a little distracted.
It was okay. The Trials of Mana Live. I tuned in out of more out of solidarity. It's not a game I'm typically interested in, but I had a good time watching you play that game on your live stream. especially with the voices and stuff you were doing. It was hilarious. Plus some great people in the chat. The stream wasn't 22 hours, but the
no,
Sib's been playing this game like crazy. And we're going to talk about it.
The stream was like 4.5 hours straight, and then I briefly took a break for food and bathroom, and then I managed to squeeze in another 15 hours. So I'm really tired, but the game is really good. And now, again, this is an old remake, so it's not perfect, and we'll get into that later. But yeah, it's been a boatload of fun. Plus, we're trying to like pump out as much content for it as we can because we didn't get a review copy, so we're like, a week behind all these other places, and we're trying to make it work. So, and for those of you who are wondering, geez, what's so special about this game, Zybe? It's what it means potentially for like old gaming, and that's the most important thing. This is a big like old school gamer, like back when when stuff was hard. And I've got to say, some of these fights, they haven't been the hardest, but they're certainly not easy. And I mean, I am playing it on the hardest difficulty, and it's like fights that like I remember playing on the original was really, really difficult, are still just that difficult. They're still really difficult. They're still really tough. You got to like start, there's a point where you got to start like using your cooldowns and everything. It's kind of like it's kind of like this like comes in as like a low flying thing and that's all of the footage that you would have seen yesterday. It was all like, wow, this looks incredibly simplistic and easy. It goes from that to this like 90-degree like up pitch very quickly, and then it climbs ridiculously high very fast to the point where I was doing one mission yesterday, or one boss fight yesterday, and there was so much red on the ground that you couldn't, like, there was no safe place to stand. It was like, all right, so I'm going to take the one-shot killing thing, the thing that petrifies my character, or the wall of spikes that just does like moderate damage. I guess I'm going for the wall of spikes. That's cool. So it's stuff like that where it's like it gets really tough really fast, and this is actually a really good sign. So anyway, sorry.
Yeah, we'll elaborate on that a little more later on. So I was going to give a review and talk
and there was
about
a ball and chain.
Talk about the the ball and chain. Talk about the more of those implications. So yeah, Time Bean says, what is special about this game? Cyb's reaction as he plays. Yes, absolutely. And for those of you marveling at Cyb playing 22 hours straight of this game,
that's nothing.
That's typical of him. When there's a game that he gets really, and yes, he is not like the rest of us in a few ways, and this is one of those ways. So yeah, when we joke about him being a cyborg, it's only partly a joke. Yeah, so there you go. When we did that Fallout 4 best ending video, man, the sheer hours that you put into that, replaying and replaying different parts of the game to find every iteration and come up with the best possible thing so that we could outline which choices to make where to get this particular ending was insane. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that's a typical day in the life of the Triple S League. If you're listening live today, you've already all said hello in the live chat, so hello to you all. And please don't forget to slam that like button. Again, apologies for what was, but we're going to move on with what is our topics for the day. But yeah, slamming that like button and subscribing, commenting, all that stuff tells YouTube that you appreciate this content, and we really appreciate that as well. All right, well, let's get on to talking about this. There's a few other topics we're going to discuss later on in the show as well. Let's get on to talking about this footage and where it actually came from. Mm-hmm. And again, because it's not leaked, we can show it to you. So we're going to put it on. I'm going to throw it up on the screen here right now. It's muted, but
there's some bitrate issues with this stuff.
It actually looks not too bad.
Just like if you're looking at this and you're going, well, that looks really fuzzy and like a little bit out of focus, and there's something wrong with the footage. That this is
Yeah. It's
there seems to be
720p
a
and it's
major,
highly compressed, so
yeah,
that's the only version I was able to grab. Unfortunately, but
yeah.
it looks better on the stream than I thought it would. So
Mhm.
anyway, it'll at least give you an idea of what's going on. So we're gonna throw
Yeah,
that up.
it's certainly not 60 FPS too. That's the other thing that you have to remember is that you're seeing this super compressed. This is not smooth. It's not smooth because it's a recording of a footage. It's a recording that was then downloaded, compiled, compressed, then re-uploaded, then downloaded again.
Well, that's
We're
just it. Yeah, it was taken from.
we're dealing with a copy of a copy of a copy that was from a piece of data that wasn't actually 100% to begin with, and so please bear that in mind. This is if you're like it looks choppy, it looks choppy because it's not the original,
Yeah.
and yeah.
So where it comes from is the deep dive video with Q&A discussion
Hmm.
that was published on the Cyberpunk 2077 YouTube channel back in August of 2019. And so the clips were taken from there and then reprocessed. So that's the quality issues that I was talking about. But what an enterprising Redditor did. So this was put together by Redditor Ninja Killa _X. And the reason this, I mean, it seems like, okay, what's the big deal about this? But it's been getting, like, you scroll through the thousands and thousands of comments and upvotes.
Hmm.
Not thousands of comments, sorry. There's hundreds of comments, thousands of upvotes. Just goes to show that people are just hungry for info about this game and to see the actual gameplay. And honestly, even though this is older footage, I mean, it got me hyped again, rehyped, I
Hmm.
guess. Not that I lost my hype for Cyberpunk, but it definitely was like, oh yeah, we've got an awesome game coming.
It
So
also shows the desire for the community to actually get more in-game footage, even if it's just a minute of walking around in V's apartment and the surrounding area.
yeah, because
It's like
this
give us something, anything. Like if this clip can pull this. And by the way, there's a lot of there's a lot of like misinformation out here. So
let me just first explain what this actually is. So this Redditor went into this deep dive Q&A video, and it has the deep dive, the deep dive video at the beginning, and then the Q&A. And what they did was they pulled out the footage seen during the Q&A portion that wasn't in the deep dive video, and then pieced it together, and it's about a minute of extra footage. So that's what we're seeing. And then this actually, what's on your screen right now, that was the scene where the screenshot comes from that you're seeing, on the thumbnail for today, and that's been available on cyberpunk.net for quite a long time now.
mhm.
All right, you were saying something about misinformation though.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a couple of articles up talking about this. The snippet was sourced from a Q&A video hosted by the developer for its fans recently. Not recently, that's part of the issue. It was like 7, 8 months old. But then other people are quoting it as CDPR has released this footage. No, CDPR did not release this particular video. But there's a bunch of articles talking about that. And again with the clickbait. Sorry, we put up the wrong thingy this morning, but it's like
I was
this
going to say I
clickbait
feel a little hypocritical
is.
ragging on other people for getting something wrong after we got something
Well, I
right.
mean, the difference is that these articles are never going to change. These articles are going to be up like this forever because they don't backtrack over this stuff, and they certainly don't correct stuff. We corrected it before we took the thing live. It was just the preview image that was a little bit bad, but it's like this is really annoying. just in general. So I mean, there's lots of that going around, and it's again really stems from just the fact that there's just not enough information.
Yeah.
And it needs to be more information. So yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I know we do have some folks from CDPR listening sometimes, and so if you're hearing this, we'd love something. Just look at this.
And it's coming. It's coming.
I know there's something coming soon.
May is when there's going to be stuff dropping in May. So,
but let's talk about what we're actually seeing on the screen here. What amazes me and what has amazed me from ever since we saw the sort of newer footage, like the deep dive and the 40-minute gameplay demo and that kind of thing, is just how lifelike the characters are. And even in still screenshots, like often when you picture a bunch of NPCs standing around in a game, you picture a bunch of very similar looking models standing around with their various, idle animations. Some of them, there may be some variety, but the women are standing a little differently than the men. But sometimes it's, sometimes you'll see exactly the same animation in two characters at the exact same time, and it looks really funny. But like when we see this footage, like the characters, just the way they move feels so real, and the way they look, the different body sizes, different postures.
Mm-hmm. Goes a long way from
this dude behind the counter here. He looks amazing. And someone was pointing out his facial expressions. I think it was Time Bean. Like the expressiveness of the faces is really cool. And just even that little gesture there, like the pointing with his thumb, head over that way or whatever. I don't know, it just looks amazing. And so this world just feels so... And I think that is why people can get so excited about this footage of just walking around, basically, is because this showcases a world that really feels alive.
Yeah, and what you were saying about the body types, unlike other games where there's 3 body types or 4 body types if you're lucky, and the men and women are all of equal height all the time, despite the fact that and this is always like really bothered me about some games. It's like the women are all the same height, so are the men, even when they're wearing heels. So a guy could put on a big pair of boots with a big thick heel, or a woman could put on a pair of boots with a heel, and they will not change in height. However, suddenly they lose about 2 inches of lower leg, which is really weird and just looks absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
And you're like, what? Like, I mean, just imagine that. It's like you're going in for like, you're going in for some kind of like shoe fitting, and they're like, all right, now we're gonna take 2 inches of your lower leg bone out, and you're like, wait, what? Like, oh, don't worry, it's what you have to do for fashion. It's like, excuse me.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's an actual thing.
Then it re-expands as soon as you take the heels off. Robin says, look at the gloss on the butcher's skin. Even the fabric on the clothing looks right. Yeah, the clothing looks amazing too. Like, whatever they've done with this engine.
Yeah, and I mean, this is part of the thing, is like the engines.
Just look at that. It's not on the screen anymore. But next time, when Placide is talking to the lady behind the counter, look at the sheet of plastic that's hanging behind them. I mean, we're seeing ray tracing effects here all over the place.
It's the best plastic that you've ever seen.
Absolutely, but and this is showcasing the effects of ray tracing. Like so sadly, it's not going to look quite as good if you don't have a ray tracing capable machine. Now, it will be on NVIDIA Now. So you'll be able to, if you want to subscribe to that service, you'll be able to, basically rent a virtual machine you'll basically be able to rent NVIDIA's hardware to play it with the full graphics capabilities if you want to. So that's an option. Do you know, Sybe, the new consoles, are they going to be RTX enabled?
I mean, at this point, we don't even know if they're going to come out. But sure,
what's the plan?
I mean, they're supposed to have ray tracing, both of them. I mean, Xbox announced it, didn't they?
See, I can't remember. That's why I'm asking. Somebody in the
really
chat,
positive.
let me know if I don't. Let's see, Notional. He usually is on top of all that stuff. But if anybody knows for sure, let me know. I don't remember off the top of my head if they announced ray tracing for the Xbox Series X or the PlayStation 5.
Mm-hmm. But no, that's the thing, and it's like, wow.
But yeah, like ray tracing is, it's such, the fact that they can do real time ray tracing now is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just even the way this goon walks, and his path is not like a straight line, like he was walking on a slight angle, relative to the walkway there. But yeah, like the way this butcher guy moves. Here, look at the camera. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Well, anyway, I mean, I could watch this all day probably, but I don't know. Anything else we want to say about this before we move on? I wanted to talk about the language stuff, but if you wanted to.
No, that's fine. The language stuff is good.
Yeah, so I mean, you'll see the language, the words appear in one language above their head, and then they like translate into English. So we don't have the audio for these clips. So is it there? If I recall correctly, the characters in this, or a lot of the characters, will actually be speaking Creole in this part of the game. Yeah. But if you have the right cybernetic enhancement, you'll be able to see the translation. Is that how it's going to work?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's what I thought. That's really cool. That's just awesome. And it brings so it's not just like normal subtitles. It's like you're actually using the cyberware.
Yeah, no, I mean that's what's cool about it.
Yeah. So
like it's such an intelligent touch that they put into the game, and that they've helped to, they're really pushing the boundaries of what it means to do an RPG. And this is, I mean, it's a small thing, but it's big. It's a big thing.
Well, and the amazing, the really fitting thing about the Cyberpunk world is that you can have your HUD, your heads-up display can really be part of the game. Like, because it's like you have, you're essentially seeing what you would be seeing if you had this cyberware installed. So, very cool stuff. So yeah, and then cdpr is continuing to unpack some lore on their Twitter feed about various gangs within the world. So we've talked about a bunch of them. Some of the ones that we haven't talked about yet. Well, there's the animals, which they're not new. We know a lot more about the animals than we know about some of the other gangs, because they were featured in a lot of the gameplay. But the animals are an aggressive street fighting gang from West Pacifica that eschews the use of traditional cyberware. Instead, they use ultra testosterone and animal supplements like growth hormones. They're animalistic at heart and dangerously proud of who they are. We were talking about, are there going to be factions that don't use cyberware? I can't remember who I was talking about that with, but I guess that's the animals. I didn't realize they don't use cyberware. but they buff themselves up with all these, animal hormones and stuff.
I think like I don't think there's any that don't use any at all, but I mean there's varying degrees of it, right?
Well, it says traditional cyberware, so whatever that
Yeah.
means.
Yeah, no,
What does
I'm
that
sure
mean
that
in this world?
I'm sure they're using some cyberware that turns them more animalistic. They're not using the same stuff that you see in everybody else's thing. So
Yeah. And then Kang Tao is a young Chinese company specializing in smart gun technology and security services. When I read smart gun now, I think of that Borderlands 3 gun with legs running across the thing. It's making its way to the top of the weapons industry at a tremendous pace thanks to bold choices, courageous strategy, and government backing. So, there you go. Violent, violent world. I want a gun with legs that runs in Cyberpunk. That was like... That's the one thing from Borderlands 3 that I'm like... We need that in more games. Guns that run around. All right. I think that's all we have for Cyberpunk at the moment. I'm just going to scroll through chat here. Robin says, I think Pacifica will be as scary as hell place. I think it's going to be interesting, yeah, because there's going to be areas where the cops don't really have a presence and it's just completely run by gangs, and so the rules are going to be different. Wouldn't want to be out after dark as a low-level character. Yeah, indeed. Notional. Imagine taking the wrong stuff and then oinking for a week. Well, there you go. N7 Myths says, I'd imagine traditional means very basic body improvements like eyes, ears, legs, etc. Yeah, potentially.
well, I think in this case what they're doing and what they're using is like any cyberware that turns them more animalistic in like their rage and muscles is obviously going to be like, that's a yes. Things that are more like, oh yes, I have an implant that recalls data and information from libraries all around the world. That I'm pretty sure would get you like booted out of the everything. Like that's just gonna result in a very 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 bad day for you if you were to mention that in your training session. Hey guys, have you read the latest from the New England Journal of Medicine? It's a fascinating read. You know that these are like the buff like crazy people taken to an extreme, right?
Yeah.
And for the most part, it's like people who work out for a living, you know, most of them are not like this. The vast majority of them are not like this. But these are the people that take it way too far. That turn it into the shrine of everything. They go to these ridiculous extremes to and that's what I think that they're showcasing here. So
all right. So, on to other things. So, Trials of Mana released yesterday, and Cyb did a long live stream of it. This is a remake of the 1995 game that was actually never officially released in the West. It was sort of unofficially ported over by modders, etc. But it was the third game in the Mana series, was only released in Japan back in the 90s on the Super Famicom. And now they've remade it and they've released it worldwide. And according to you, Cyb, it's a very faithful recreation and a really well done recreation, and could even potentially be something that gives a rebirth to this entire genre. And I don't know if you mean JRPGs altogether or this particular type of JRPG.
No, JRPGs are having a new golden age again. We're getting a lot of like these old games, like the Final Fantasy remake that was just put out has been being received generally quite well. There's a bunch of other things that have been being worked on and stuff like this. And this is like it's starting to like turn Square Enix around, because Square had moved away, I think, from their what made them good and the games that they were good at. That doesn't mean, whenever a studio or whenever a publisher moves away from games that they made, it's like, yeah, I can understand why you thought that this was important, but you're an idiot for abandoning the things that made you great. Yeah, it's one of the main reasons why um, Black Isle, fell away into nothingness, is because they they stopped making the games that people wanted them to make, and they just believe that, oh no, now that 3D tech is here, all 2D games are they don't sell anymore. But it wasn't just them, it was everybody. Like everybody fell for this like hook, line, and sinker almost immediately. And instead of incorporating and working on improvement, or instead of adding like shorter content quicker, instead of doing things like that, they just went all into these gigantic 3D engines. And whenever people talk about, oh, the studio needs to upgrade its engine, it's like, warning, warning, warning. Some 80% of studios that try to change their engine by creating a new one end up going bankrupt. So, yeah, no, this is not that you want mediocrity, not that you want like studios to never change, but there's a time and a place for change, and then there's a time and a place for like pushing through with what you're best at. And sometimes that means you need to downscale yourself a little bit. Other times that means you need to expand. And this is the danger. This is the tightrope that you have to walk, because it's not that there's only one way to do this, but it's that if you stray too far to the right or to the left, you'll end up falling off. You have to have this balance in order to make this stuff. So Square Enix is starting to realize that, partially because I think they're really close to they were really close to being broke for quite a while there, and that's not good. And what I think that they've started to realize now, and hopefully they will with this, and I've been hearing some rumors that if this game does really, really well, they'll actually start making more mana games within this like kind of like art style. Because really, with the Final Fantasy games, you have this pushing towards this like they're trying to push for as much of like a live action look and feel as they can, while retaining, just a bit of the, over the top craziness. But then in this game and in this series, what you have, I think, is this ability for them to really create something that people have been wanting for a while, and that I think they have room for. Um, it's kind of like there was a Twitter post recently by somebody who was all upset that the whole Overwatch Disney cartoon style was becoming, super prevalent. And it's like, I understand the frustration there with, everybody's got to be doing an Overwatch shooter that is exactly like that. Um, and that's not true. I don't think that needs to be the case, but I mean that's what we're getting more and more. And it's annoying for some people, and I totally get it, because that's not the style that they enjoy. They don't like that for whatever reason. And that's true, but at the same time, it's like, doesn't mean that it's inherently bad. And so what we're going to see with Square Enix, if this game does really, really well, I think what they'll do is they'll start doing more. They've already said that I think it's already been confirmed that they're doing more Final Fantasy remakes. Um, but I think they're going to be moving in that direction with that, and then they're going to keep this like really cartoony style of this game, going in this direction with the current style, and that's good, because I think it's actually quite funny and good. And there was a there was a clip yesterday. I'm gonna clip it out and put it up in a short video for you guys sometime soon. But it's like, in the Mana series, they're really embracing like like things that I don't think they could get away with if they were doing more of a live actiony thing, because it comes off as more like straight up comedy. Um Comedy and like over the top, kind of like, whatever. And plus the directors behind it seem to be like, we don't care about the negativity. So yeah, it's interesting. There was some comments made about this is what's been so fun about Trials. So I've been playing with the whole three girl team, partially because I wanted to get all of the end game bosses, which you can miss out on by not having characters from a particular arc. And there's one character that you have to pick in order to get their full story. There's actually two of them in order to get their full story, and they have bosses that you just don't get from any other of the characters. So you have to have at least these two characters, which means you actually have to do a bare minimum of 2 playthroughs to get all of the bosses. And you can get as many, like, the experience that you get playing the game can change multiple times. It's like even some areas are different in by the choices that you make as far as their teammates go. But doing this one, Charlotte's this tiny little kid, and then there's these two girls that are more grown up, and they were wearing these funny little outfits, and there was this conversation that transpired between the girls and the younger girl, and they brought in the regular excuses, and then they capped it off with like, well, you just you'll understand when you're older. And she got all like pissy because it's like, are you talking down to me again? Well, I hope you two catch the cold in those outfits. It's so funny. Anyways, like I said, I'm gonna put that up. But overall, it's like this game means a lot for old school kind of like stuff and old school developers, because the 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 original like team on this got together to really work on this, to get this out, and they built this up really, really well. And if this does well, which it looks like it's tracking towards, right now it's sitting with, I believe, very positive on Steam. If this ends up tracking really well and becoming kind of a new mainstream thing, then we're going to be seeing more of these games. We're going to be seeing a rebirth to the Trials, or to the Mana series, which I cannot wait for, because this is really good. So yeah, this is like they did a redo of Secret of Mana back in 2018, and it was terrible. It was just really horrendous. But they really nailed it with this one. So we're hoping to see more of this stuff, because it means that we've got, hopefully we'll have more of this content coming, because yeah, we went through a big pause of not having anything. So
Yeah, I remember when that came out, and you were disappointed by it. The one of the previous remake. So it's great. It's good that they've done a. I'm glad to hear they've done a good job with this one. So do you want to give a brief synopsis and review of the game?
um yeah, so I mean, basically it follows six heroes as their world's basically changing, um and not necessarily for the better. Everything's kind of going sideways, and these six characters are all like brought together by the stuff that happens. But you, as the player, can only pick one person as your main, and then two companions, and then the story changes completely between those different characters and those different playthroughs. So they've introduced a new game plus mode. They've introduced new story content. The world is still very much an old school RPG, which means there's very little like NPC quests. There's very little side quests. There's just the main story that you're chasing, and the interaction is not as deep as other RPGs that you get these days, or other RPGs even at its time. Comparative to like Fallout 1 and 2, very different than what this one is. Um, and your main character is trying to like basically right the wrongs, and at the same time there's like they're meeting all these other people and these other heroes and whatnot. So it's very interesting. That's pretty much it in the bundle. I'm definitely giving this then top marks. The only thing that is a slight issue is some of the dialogue was poorly directed, I would say. I don't think it's the voice actors at fault. I think it's and I don't think it's necessarily the direction. The director may not have had much of a choice, and that's, and that's acceptable. But the fact that they included both, you can switch between the English and the Japanese dubs whenever you want. You can choose between the original music or the redone music. Um, there's a choice too. I mean, it just makes it it makes it really solid in every way, shape, and form. So definitely a 9 out of 10, if not a 10 out of 10. We'll see once I finish the actual game and start on some of the new game plus stuff.
Yeah, and if you
No
want
fits with
to,
character.
like, if you want a good sampling of the gameplay, check out the live stream that Cyb did yesterday. The VOD of that is on our channel indefinitely. Plus, we've got more content coming. Some guides and things.
But no, definitely, I would say definitely pick it up. If you're into old school RPGs, if you played the original, you will not be, or not the original, because it didn't release in the West, but there was a fan translation that was worked on. I played that. That's the one that I played, and like they really they even paid homage to it, to the fan work, at several points. So yeah,
Good.
it's pretty cool.
Awesome. So, going back to what you said earlier, so Ren Sten, thank you for the generous super chat. Really appreciate that. Ren says, this is missing a key point that major publishers put pressure on developers to perform in 3D and push them out of their strong suits. So this I believe harkens back to what you were talking about when the transition to 3D was made, and of course, yes, publishers say, "Oh, this is the new thing. Do this." And so you had some really good, sort of groundbreaking 3D games on sort of the original PlayStation, the original, and on the N64. But there was a lot of garbage as well. There was a lot of games that were like, this seems like filler. This seems like they were just like, let's take our franchise and crank it into 3D. And it doesn't always work, but yeah, there's some publisher pressure there.
There was a lot of games and a lot of companies that fell because of that. And again, a lot of it stems from this new 3D concept is out. It releases to, mass, like everybody's, something new. Oh my goodness, it's 3D. Oh my goodness, I can see the left and right side of my character in real time. I mean, it's a square blob with very, 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 very blurry like eyeballs and a mouth, but I can see around my character, and like seriously, it's always funny to like watch this stuff. I remember being at CES way back in the day, so long ago that the computer games were out in tents, not actually in the main building. They were out in tents in Vegas, of all places, right next to the prawn developers, the people who make prawn. And by the way, there's some really interesting side stories that you have with this, because these people spent weeks together at a time, and there's a reason why the games industry has always had this like subtle connection with the prawn developers back in the day. It's why the original Diablo from Blizzard had a lot of topless characters. It's why, well, I mean, aside from the fact that devs are just horny nerds, but there was all this kind of like weird connection back then. Anyways, I remember way back then watching somebody see a 3D game for like the first time, and it's like they had like it's like they were suddenly like lifted from their they're I don't know how to describe it. The person had almost like this mental breakdown because they couldn't believe that they were seeing a a character represented in 3 dimensions. They it just had blown their mind to the point, and they were like, I can't believe what the future. Oh, and you can see the arm moves, and and it's like, dude, are you okay? Like, is this the first time you've seen something in 3 dimensions? Like, do you get this excited when you wake up in the morning? I mean, I'm just curious. Do you pick up a tube of toothpaste and go, I could see the tube of toothpaste? Like, I mean, and I guess it was probably because he was a lot older, but there's just some people that it's so weird to see their reactions to this. Paulies, thanks for the super chat. If he asks, if 2077 makes a lot of money in rewards, will it make many publishers and developers try to make more gambles towards making more mature, unique games? Yes, this is coming. Oh, dude, you have no idea. This is coming. And the main reason for this is that eventually, like, we're seeing it start to boil here, and I'm pretty convinced, because it's an easily exploitable thing for politicians, that eventually they're going to put stringent rules on the gaming industry. And anything that's even reminiscent of gambling is going to be a teen, if not an adult game. And as soon as they realize that, well, the game, we made this game with microtransactions because we need money. And we want more money. And you know what? We're competing now with everybody who's making these things. It's already an adult rating. Why don't we just add some nudity to it? Or why don't we make it like a more mature concept? The minute they realize that this will give them an advantage, you'll see a race for it. And then you're going to see this big shift towards it, where the mainstream is now in that section because it's making the money. And then it will, it's like a clock, like a grandfather clock. The pendulum is swinging to the, back and forth and back and forth. That's what happens culturally, typically, very often. Like, it just goes from one side to the other, from one side to the other. Right now, you've got certain gaming publishers and platforms that are censoring everything that they possibly can, because that's what they believe that they need to do. And eventually, well, not eventually, what we're seeing now is we're starting to see the pushback on this, not only from CD Projekt Red and Cyberpunk 2077, but other developers, indie developers. And again, the reminder is that the indie developers back in the day were, like Blizzard. Blizzard's a great example. Blizzard was an indie developer who made their name in games that featured really dark content and nudity and all that kind of stuff. And then all of the sudden they want to make, well, I mean, this was with their stupid phone thing. It's like, oh yeah, we're intending to make Diablo a family friendly game. It's like, an episode of Leave It to Beaver or something like that, where this old black and white, like super family friendly comedy thing, where the door opens and Jimmy comes in and he's like, hi mom, hi dad, what's going on today? Oh son, you got in trouble at school today. I did not. Who told you that? Well, Beelzebub did. And Beelzebub comes walking in with a little pitchfork and a little friendly little horns coming out of his head, going, hey guys, what's going on? Yeah, I saw Jimmy. What did Jimmy do? Oh, he took a piece of bubble gum from Sally. Oh my. Oh, the hilarity. That's what they're doing. And it's, how are you doing this with Biel, Lord of Darkness and Decay, Death and Destruction? Are you guys not getting what this concept is? It's like, at some point, the pendulum will swing the other way, and then we will end up switching back to the other side, because this is just how it goes. When the mainstream's on one side, you need people who are pulling it back to the center, and then as soon as it crosses the Rubicon, you need to go back onto the other side as a critic, and you need to pull it back the other way, because what you're wanting to do is make sure that both, the both sides of the Rubicon have things that are being placated properly and respectfully to intelligent level, because if you don't, you end up getting a monopoly, or worse, you get a breakdown in everything, because suddenly there's nothing out there for those gamers that want something that has a little bit more, you know, real world elements to it, and or they want more fantasy elements to it, and you have to balance these two things. And this is something that a lot of these studios completely forget. I mean, journalists, I mean, this concept is thrown out the window on day one. It's like journalism 101 in current day is like, all right, so the pendulum, that's not a thing. We're gonna push this thing as far to one side as we possibly can, and then we're gonna nail it there and add a bunch of weight to it until it breaks, and then swing so far to the other side that we all collectively lose our minds. That's essentially what's going on. And in their classes, and they don't see that. They don't see that eventually the harder that they push it one direction, and then the more you nail it there, the more weight that you put up against it, the more it's going to come crashing to the other side. The same is true for, like, just doing some history reading. It's like the Puritans who came over to, like, that settled certain areas. It's like they were crazy. They were crazy. They were crazy. Like, I mean, I can't even talk about the insane things that they would do to try and keep the quote unquote purity. It was insane. It was absolutely insane. And and I don't want to get distracted, but it was mentally stupid for them to do what they were doing. And when you look back on it now, it's like, yeah, that's crazy. But we're getting closer and closer to that, nowadays, because it's like, I mean, we have figurative witch burnings that happen quite often whenever somebody says something that they shouldn't like. And this is, of course, this is both political and gaming, but really I'm trying to focus on the gaming aspect here, because all of that's true. And we're going to see this big shift when these small indie studios put out games that are considered, dark or edgy or mature or adult in nature, when they suddenly break the all-time record and it becomes such a meme. Like, I mean, just, I mentioned Overwatch and the whole, like, cartoony aspect of that. It's like Rule 34, man. It takes that stuff to an extreme every single day. And why is it doing that? Because it's right now they moved away from that concept as a whole, and they start censoring things, and they start clamping down on things. If you want to make something grow, try to censor it. If you want to try and make an ideology or a concept or a way of life very popular in society, you as a person in power, try to destroy it as quickly as you can. If there's one way to make become bigger and become more popular, do that. And we're going to see that with Cyberpunk. We're going to see how there's people that are going to come out and say, this is atrocious, this is blah 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 blah, this is, and we've already seen this. It's like, this is unacceptable, because you're depicting scenarios where people are being taken advantage of. It's like, yeah, that's the point of the story. Well, I don't like that. Well, sorry that you don't like something that, like, you want the bad guys to show up and be like, Jimmy stole a piece of bubble gum from Sally and he didn't say sorry. It's like, is that the story? It's like the whole concept behind, like, GI Joes, right? Saturday morning GI Joes. It's like people are sitting there. Yeah, if a real soldier ever showed up in that, and, like, I want, like, some, like, SEAL Team 6 to be dropped in, and they come in the Cobra is like having their weekly meeting, power meeting, and they come in and like they just like mercilessly take down like a whole bunch of people, a whole bunch of grunts, and the Cobra commander's sitting there going, "What's going on? What's wrong with these people? They're actually shooting them. Why would they do that? Well, you're a terrorist. But why would they do that?" It's like, again, what do you expect? And so that's the concept that some people are like, no, I'm sick of the kiddie stuff, and I want something else that portrays the crazy world that we're in, because it's part of escapism. It's part of dealing with escapism too. If you honestly believe that nobody is capable of being genuinely malevolent, you will end up either in an asylum or losing your mind at some point in your life. Like that's just the way it works. From a psychological perspective, if you honestly believe that nobody's capable of pure, true, malicious malevolency, you will go insane, because when you finally come across it, your mind will be shattered, because you can't, it doesn't fit into your perception of reality, and you end up losing your mind. Like this is a legitimate thing. Like soldiers go through this when they go over and they suddenly get shot at, and their jaws drop. And they're like, I can't believe they're shooting at us. It's like, we're in a war. What did you think was going to happen? Well, but they're shooting at us. It's like, again,
It's you can expect it, but once you're in that situation, it's like it's different once it's actually happened. I had something similar to that. Like the first time I played paintball, it was a bizarre thing when I realized that dude over there is shooting at me.
Mm-hmm.
It was anyway. It's nowhere near, of course, the same thing, but it kind of freaked me out for a second. I was like, I'm being shot at. This is freaky. Because it was like, if those were real bullets, Anyway.
But time being points out a really, really important thing here. Free play is super important. Super important. And this is true because not everybody plays fair. And it's your realization that not everybody plays fair that makes you grow up and realize that you need to, if you want people to play fair, you actually have to like take an active role in ensuring that happens, and that you have to develop a backbone and a set of rules and morality for yourself and for your friends to abide by, that allows you to continue to play or perform at a level that fosters free play.
Yeah,
or
you know what?
Fosters fair play, fair play, not free play in free play.
Yeah.
So
there's another excuse me. There's another aspect to it as well, and that's how kids learn to process things, or it's one of the means by which they process things. And I've watched my kids as they grow up play at times some rather disturbing things. They were playing a game one day where they were like 4 and 6 years old, or maybe even a little younger, and they were playing this game where their stuffed animals were dying, and they were like mourning them. And I was like, the initial gut reaction is be like, what on earth are you doing? But I was like, no, you know what? Clearly they're trying to understand this whole concept.
Yeah.
And they're trying to role play it and process it.
Because they either heard it in the news, or a family member passed away, or something like that, where they suddenly had to come to terms with how this thing worked. And if you take a rush and you attempt to try and like force people to not deal with that, you always end up getting the wrong outcome. It always ends up coming back to bite you in the butt, because like I said, if you want to make sure that something becomes popular or becomes prevalent in society or in somebody's life, try to censor it. It's like you see this with the music is a great example of this. Every generation, music goes one way, and the parents or the previous generation freak out because this isn't what this isn't what music should be, and it's like, yeah, but your parents said the same thing about your generation of music, and back and back and back and back and back, and I mean, yeah, you can foster good things. I think we can all agree that, and I've got to be careful here because this is a joke, obviously, but I don't actually really want to actually offend anybody for the cause of a joke. So let me pick a good one here. Justin Bieber. There we go. We can all agree that Justin Bieber is terrible and should be banned from everybody listening to at all times. But really, because obviously the Beatles are better. Well, that's the thing that people said about the Beatles when the Beatles were.
Oh yeah,
around.
the Beatles were.
I mean, it was massive. I mean, I think people died at some of those things.
That was the. Yeah, I mean that was the devil's music, and
yeah.
Elvis Presley too, and all of these musicians that we look at and think like, oh, these are this is
and
these are classics. This is classic oldies music, and the kids think it's lame because it's old. Although old stuff is very popular with Gen Z for some reason, but it's the constant cycle of this, like, oh, that it needs to stay the old way. This new stuff is evil. Well, no.
Mm-hmm. Now, Ash and I have a very interesting childhood. And I'm going to mention something here. I'm not going to go into details, but did you ever get an issue by any of your relatives over the ballroom dancing that we would attend? Not obviously like
no.
Together we danced.
That's
with girls,
yeah.
See that for me, I had an hour-long lecture on dancing's not allowed. The only dancing you can do is in the living room with your spouse after you've been married for several years.
Yeah.
And I had that talk when I came back one day. Now, this coming from somebody who at that time I was really, really, really positive towards like control and like censorship. I wanted to develop I started working on an app, not an app, but like original programming to basically censor the internet of all like anything that I didn't like. And it didn't take long for me to realize, this was over the course of like probably a few months. It didn't take long for me to realize because it was actually one of our mutual friends that challenged me on the concept of it, saying you'd have to censor everything, and then nobody would be able to speak freely, and then you would ultimately end up being censored. I went, I think you're right. Like logical, like it was just a logical thing that I had to follow in my head. This was when I was really young. And so obviously it's like I realize that now, and that's why I'm so like, that's why I harp on this subject, because this is like, if we're going to get in trouble if gaming continues to try and censor itself in the way that it has been. If gaming continues to do that, it will get in trouble and will ultimately become worthless. And this is why Cyberpunk is going to be so popular, because they break that mold that people have been forcing other people into.
Yeah. And it's not, and I mean, it's the thing about Cyberpunk is it's artistically gritty and realistic.
Mm-hmm.
In the, it's not gratuitous. It's not like, oh, we're just shoving this in for sex appeal and to,
mm-hmm.
to appeal to pervs. No, like it's
a real world scenario.
Yeah, exactly. They're just making a real looking world.
Mm-hmm.
And
so quickly before we finish this subject, I want to tack on one additional quick thing, and that when it comes to Cyberpunk and this whole scenario of that, we're going to have this it's going to hit a wall at some point. And we already see it with other people calling for censorship in things right now. And this is why we need to break this wall, because there are people that are demanding that World War II bad guys be censored and removed from future World War II games. And it's like, do you realize what you're suggesting?
That's
Yes.
absurd. Yeah.
Yeah, what they're suggesting is that we break the conflict down to a red versus blue concept of, well, it's just two colors that are fighting against each other. Well, first of all, I find that really like at some level of that finds that really racist. I mean, it's just like, let's just have the colors fight. It's like,
well, one of the comical elements about the red versus blue series was that in the end it turned out to be, I mean, spoiler for episodes that are many, many years old at this point, but that red and blue were being controlled by the same overarching entity. Like, there was no... I mean, and so there's no difference between them, actually. And that's what's going to happen if you do that. You want to say that, the people that were on the different sides of the conflict in World War II, there was actually no difference between them and their goals and what they were trying to accomplish. Really? That's what you want to do? That you want us to forget? You want us to forget that era in history and the amazingly important lessons that are going to come from that? Really?
Yeah. Well, it's I mean, and I've already encountered this once before. I had somebody who was like, I think the Nazis were pretty, or sorry, I wasn't supposed to say
Whatever
that
you
word.
said, it just...
I thought the World War II bad guys were pretty cool. I'm like, why would you think that? Well, they got some really cool colors. I'm like, do you not know what they did? It's like, no, parents don't want me watching anything to do with that. So I'm like, this is why you don't hide stuff from your kids.
Well, I'm not... Yeah, that's, again, like, I'm not looking forward to...
censor them out of video gaming, because the minute that you do that, suddenly people are going to look back and it's just become a stylistic choice. It's like, I disagree with I'm going to get into a rabbit hole here. No, let's leave it at that and move on to...
All right, sounds good. You are listening to the Augmented Reality Podcast. We love seeing the awesome conversation in the live chat. If you want to keep the conversation going after the live broadcast, don't forget to join the Discord community. You can find the link in the description below. It's a place where you can chat with us and with other Triple S community members about all the things we love to talk about. Stay up to date about everything we're doing here at the Triple S League. Click the link below to join, and be sure to say hi to us in the welcome channel. It's a fun place. Keeps me sane when I'm up working at 1 in the morning. So, a couple other things to get to here. So, Horizon Zero Dawn 2 is on the way, and it's, I mean, we don't know that that's what it's going to be called. But it's a sequel to Horizon Zero Dawn.
I think that'll be its, for sure, primary title.
You think that'll be...
I don't know. It's
an awkward as hell title if that's the case.
Well, no, it's just everybody's going to refer to that as that's what the community of gaming is going to refer to it.
Well, yeah, we'll call it that until we have an official title, I'm sure.
Yeah,
but it's going to be a PS5 exclusive. It was originally going to be coming for the PlayStation 4 as well, but they've altered that. It's going to be for the next gen console only. And so, if you're lucky enough to get your hands on one, you can play the sequel to Horizon Zero Dawn. HZD 1 is coming to PC at some point, and
so this, will you be able to play Horizon Zero Dawn 2 on PC at some point in the future? I suspect yes. I don't suspect it'll be within 4, maybe even 5 or 6 years from the release of it on the PlayStation. And why? Because the exact same reason why they dropped Horizon Zero Dawn on the PC was to drive people to buy more PlayStation for anticipation of the second game. That is the whole marketing strategy there. So yes, Horizon Zero Dawn 2 is going to be a primarily PlayStation 5 game. They're definitely not going to be putting that on PC, and they're going to tout that line until about 3 or 4 years down the road, right up until they're working on their next game for the series, because they've made it clear that this is going to end up being
A
so the
trilogy.
next game is
Yeah.
and that's when they'll put out Zero Dawn 2. And then just like what happened with Mass Effect, suddenly the third and final game will be relegated only to the platform, period. And then you will not be able to play Horizon Zero Dawn 2 at any 3 at any point on the PC. But 2 definitely. Oh yeah. They'll definitely do that. Again, not anywhere near release, probably several years afterwards. Like they did with number 1, coinciding with their next game getting ready to launch, because they want to drive people to the console, to get people to buy the console for the next iteration of the game, because that's how the marketing works.
Right.
And
Sorry, there was a tiny audio blip there, and so a couple of your words got cut out. But yes, so apparently we're hearing and reading reports that this is going to be at least a trilogy of Horizon games. And yeah, so, but I mean that would make sense for the second one to come to PC, and then the third one to be to be PlayStation exclusive. If you want to play that game, then you have to buy into the platform. Makes sense. Not in a I don't say that approvingly, but I mean it makes sense that they would do that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, no, that's definitely where we will end up seeing this. Now, I don't know. I mean, I think they'll probably be able to do it pretty well. Yeah.
All right.
No, that makes sense to me. All right. And then what? Take Two.
Yeah, you had some things you wanted to say about that. So Take Two Publishing, the publishing company that owns Gearbox and other. So they anyway big publishing company that we have some history with, but they are changing up the way they do things apparently.
Mm-hmm.
So what's going on there?
So, and just let me sneeze here. I think I'm gonna sneeze. I hate. Okay, now that that's done with. So they've said basically that they want to put out more games faster, and they want to have smaller games, but on a more regular basis. This is what Ubisoft tried to do. This is what a couple other studios have tried to do in the past, and it's always ended up backfiring and causing major damage to the company. So go ahead, do it, Take Two, do it, go ahead, because it's going to be really funny to watch as that stuff hits the fan. I honestly don't know why they would come out and say this, let alone like before having done any like research or like figuring on how to do that. Like this stuff is not going to this is oh man.
Yeah, I had a major brain fart moment there and couldn't remember any of the companies that were like under Take Two except for Gearbox, and
There's a lot of
but
them.
yeah, like so what does this mean for like some of the series that they are responsible for publishing? Example: BioShock, Borderlands, GTA, Red Dead.
So I think what they may end up doing, if they, I think what they may end up doing is they may end up going the way that they've been kind of doing this with GTA Online, is that they put out a big game, and then they follow it with every 6 months there's a DLC for it, and then that game is going to last for 6 to 7 years. and they're going to be putting out regular content like that over and over and over and over again. Now, in that regard, that kind of makes sense, and that's kind of cool. Because it means that you're going to be coming back and you're going to be spending $40 or $50 on DLC every single year instead of spending $80 once every 5 years. So that makes sense. It really does. It fits in with what I think they want to kind of go for. So yeah, makes sense. Has a lot of potential there for stuff. So yeah, but ultimately I think this will end up hurting them because they're doing something that they're going to end up risking a lot of loss over. So yeah.
All right. Could be interesting, and I mean we've been sort of keeping an eye on how some of the companies underneath Take-Two are run, and it's not a nice picture.
No.
So, I mean, you got things like Extreme Crunch, and we talked recently about Gearbox and their employees not getting the bonuses that were promised them, that kind of a thing. I don't know. It seems
allegedly, that's still an allegedly story. We cannot confirm nor deny the exact scenario that.
Well, we're just talking about what was being reported, but so yeah, it seems like some sort of restructuring is needed. Is this the right way to go, though? Is this going to help anything or exacerbate problems?
I think this is a very big mistake.
Yeah.
I think this is a huge mistake that they are going to end up. They're going to end up causing some massive problems with. So
right.
Ooh, yeah.
And with that, I mean, I think we're just about done as far as our topics for the day. We do have. I wanted to read a couple of things from our content requests channel. So Somnolence had said, addressing myself and Saib, you'd hoped that without E3 it'll be easier to keep up with everything, but it seems it will be even worse. Everybody wants to do their own separate thing at the first week of June, and simultaneously IGN, Games Radar, the PC Gaming Show, every big publisher doing their own conference. Yeah, well, if they do all sort of collide like that, and if they do all sort of do everything all at the same time, that could be an issue. But hopefully they'll spread things out a little more so that they're not all trying to compete with one another. That's my hope. Will they do that? I don't know. Maybe they want that competition and to try and drown out the other guy. That's possible.
It's going to be really, really interesting, just due to how this kind of functions. And so, yeah, I am seriously very, very interested in exactly how this works and exactly how this is going to end up working. Because we're going to see a total change in how everything is done and how everything is looked at, and then how this will affect the future of the content. We are really looking for a significant alteration in everything that we know as far as it comes to this industry. So yeah, very interesting.
And then also in our content requests, James Fullerton asks, have either of you played the Colony ship demo from Iron Tower? It's made by the same people who helped Brian Mitsoda make Dead State.
It's also a very, very like original like Fallout type game, like Fallout 1 and 2. So it looks interesting. I gotta say, looks very, very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Where it goes from here, I don't know yet. This is definitely going to be, because I haven't given it a shot. It's on the list, but I'm really hoping that the game does well because I really want to see more of this kind of stuff come out. We're also going to get this in Wasteland 3 is coming out. So it's kind of a similar type system. So yeah, I personally very interested for it. Would love to see everything that works on this.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I haven't had the chance to check it out much myself, but that's an option there. If there's a demo out, something you can check out. And with that, we're going to wrap up the show for today. So thank you all so very much for listening and for the great conversation in the chat. And whether you're listening live or after the fact, we appreciate you. Please don't forget to slam that like button before you leave. That really helps us out a lot. Shows us that you appreciate this content. Shows the YouTube that you like this content. Also, commenting, subscribing, hitting that notification bell. All of those things are taken into account by the YouTube system, so we really appreciate that as well. Special thanks to our Patreon supporters and our channel members who make this content possible. Our big dang heroes on Patreon, Josh, Robin, Timebean, and 2 Anonymous, big darn heroes there. And our channel members on YouTube, Mr. Pazdernick, Jer Schultz, Game Notes, Night City Punk, and Terror K. Thank you so much. It's especially helpful right around this current time. If you're listening after the fact on SoundCloud, iTunes, Spotify, or any of the other platforms this podcast goes to, we appreciate your interactions there as well. Don't forget you can join the live show on YouTube on Wednesdays and Saturdays, where you can interact with us and other listeners and be a part of the discussion. Also, you get the latest info sooner, because getting the podcast to the audio platforms is it's entirely dependent on how busy we are with other stuff. So sometimes there's a delay. There's usually a delay, but sometimes it's a long delay. So definitely, subscribe to the YouTube to get the podcast as it happens. The Augmented Reality Podcast is a presentation of the Triple S League. Check out our YouTube channel for game guides, reviews, comedy, news updates, and tons more quality gaming content. My name is Ash. On behalf of Obsidian, thank you all so much for listening. We'll talk to you again very soon.